Hi guys, this is Ashish from Edureka. Now welcome to the 7th video of this Edureka's free Angular course for beginners. Here I'm going to talk about forms. Now as you can see the roadmap, we already have covered a lot of concepts revolving around Angular. We worked on components, data binding, directives, routing. This Angular form video is the second last video concerning the concept that we need in order to go ahead and build a full-fledged CRUD application using Angular. So let's get started with Angular forms. Now, as you know, forms are the most crucial aspect of any web application. So if you visit any of the website, you will encounter forms in one way or another. In general, forms are used to go ahead with functionalities such as sign up process, for signing in, for search functionality, for getting the feedback or survey from people. So basically, forms are the interface from which we get majority of rich data from the users. So it is quite essential to build the form in such a manner that there is a very less space for an error to happen, or very less space that a user go ahead and provides incorrect data. The second thing is about the flow of the forms. You should be very much precise about how the values are being entered and how you're gonna retrieve those values and finally store it in your database. So let's go ahead and understand what are different ways that Angular provides us to build a form. So basically there are two techniques or two types of forms that Angular provides. The first one is called as template-driven forms and the second one is the reactive forms. Now in this video, I'll be talking about template-driven forms only. This is the first part of this Angular form video. In the second part, that is the next video, I'm going to go ahead with reactive forms. So let's get started with template-driven forms. Now, as the name implies, a template-driven forms are built by writing templates where we bind directive and behavior to our templates and let Angular do the rest. So we'll be relying on directives like NGModel and perhaps attributes like required, min length, etc. On a higher level, this is what template-driven forms achieve for us. By specifying directives to bind our models, values, validation, etc., we are letting the template to do the work under the scene or behind the scene. So it's time to go ahead and code it out so that you can get a better perspective of things that I'm talking over here. So let me open my editor over here and I'm gonna spin up a lightweight server so that I can host my application using the ngserve command. The application will be hosted on the port 4200. So the building process has begun and finally we are good to go to visit the application that we have for now. Alright, now here we'll be building a basic form with 2 or 3 input fields and there we'll be adding some validation rule as well. We'll learn how to do all those things. For now, let's go ahead and create a component on which we'll be working for template-driven forms. So I'm gonna go ahead with another instance of my terminal and I'm gonna go ahead with ng component. I'm gonna name it as template-driven. Now that our component has been created, which we can check out over here, as you can see, this is the folder for our component. This is the component class and this is the template file or the HTML file. Now, whenever you are going ahead with template-driven form, you have to import a certain module called as forms module. So let's go ahead and do that. Otherwise, you will get some error while working around directives like NGModel and NGForms. So let's go ahead and do that. Forms module from @angular/forms. Then you need to put your forms model in your imports array. That's it. Now we are good to go with template-driven forms. Now with template-driven forms, we can essentially leave a component class empty until unless we have to read or write values from the forms, or you have to send data that has been entered by the user on your form to your backend API or to the service class. Then only you have to work around your component class. Otherwise, all your works will be inside your template, as the name suggests, template-driven forms. So we want to go ahead with our template, and here we're going to create a form. All right. So this is our basic form. Now I'm going to create 3 inputs. The first one will be for name, the second one will be for contact, and the third one will be for email. So basically what I want is I want to create a form that will add user to an array that I'll be creating in my component class, and then we'll add validation rules to all those input fields so as to ensure that the data entered by user are correct or validated. So let's go ahead with a label. Let's name it as name. Now we need an input field, which will be of type text, and a name attribute, which I will be talking about later on, and we do not need value for now. Similarly, I want a field for my contact, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So this will be for my contact, and then for my email. All right. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to export a template reference variable for our form so that we can access all those value of form that has been entered by the user. So I'm going to go ahead with #frm and use something called as ngForm directive. Now if I go ahead and interpolate the value of the form and use a pipe JSON, now we are not able to see the form because we haven't nested our component. So let's go ahead and do that as well in our app component template. So let's go ahead with our app component template, and it's done. So now as you can see, we are having a form for now. Let's do one more thing. Let's put it inside a container. Dev class container, and then let's use a jumbotron as well. I'm doing these just to make our form good looking. It has nothing to do with template driven forms. So for now we are having it so far good. We need to add a button as well. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead with a button, which will be of type submit, and the name of button will be add user. Now let's add some CSS class. Button success. Similarly, I'm gonna add CSS class to all my controls or all my input fields. So I'm gonna go ahead with form group and then form control. All right then, so you can see we are having our form over here, which is looking good for now. Now, the thing that I was discussing was the template reference variable that we have just added as frm, and we have used our ngForm directive. Using that, we can access the values that has been entered by the user on our form. Now, if you notice over here, you can see that we are receiving an object as a JSON, which is empty for now. Now, even if I enter any values, we are not able to retrieve those values or access those values. This is happening because there is no model that has been assigned to values for our form. For that, we're going to go ahead and use a directive called as NGModel. So I'm going to go ahead with NGModel. Now the next error that we are getting is name attribute. So that is the mandate part for using NGModel. You have to go ahead and assign name attribute. We have to do that because NGModel will look for a name attribute and assign that value as a new object key for the global ngForm object that we have just created, that is frm, to which we are referring to using. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add our name attribute as name, then contact, then email. All right. So now as you can see, the JSON object that we are having with respect to the form values, we are having 3 keys over here as name, contact that we have assigned in our name attribute. So in a nutshell, NGModel talks to the form and finds the form value based on the name attributes value. In this case, we have assigned our name attributes as name, contact, and email with respect to all these 3 fields. Now if you enter any value over here, you can see we are able to access the value. So that's how it works out. So we'll be using this, we'll be passing these values to our component class, and there we'll be adding user to a list, which we'll be displaying later on. Now that our basic template has been created for our form, the next thing that we want to do is we need to add a functionality, submit functionality. So whenever a person submits the form, we need to access those values and finally add it to an array, which we'll be displaying later on as discussed earlier. So what I want is I want to catch an event called as ngSubmit. So whenever a person submits the form, this event will take place. And finally, I'm going to bind it with a method that I'm going to define in my component class. And there I'm going to pass my template variable so that we can have the access of the value that has been entered by that particular person. Now let me add this function to my component class. So I'm going to go ahead with that. Add user, a method which will pass a template variable, and let's console it out for now. All right. Now let's see whether it works or not. So we are able to retrieve the value from our forms. Now the next part is we need to create a model for our user object, that the object that we're receiving from our form. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a model or an interface to be precise. It's user.ts, export interface user. It will have three fields. One will be string, other one will be contact, which will again be a string, and the last one will be email. I'm doing this because I want an array of this type user where I'll be feeding all my user that will be submitted from my form. So I'm going to go ahead to my component class again, and there I'm going to import that interface, and it will be in my user class. Now let's go ahead and create an array user list, which will be of type user. For now it will be an empty list. All right. Now the next part that we want to do is we need to add validation rules, some of the validation rules in all our fields. So one of the validation rule can be we want the user to fill all these three fields, and until and unless he has not entered the values in all these three fields, he will not be able to submit the form. So let's go ahead and add a disable attribute to our button. So I'm going to go ahead with the disable property over here, disabled equals to form.invalid. So whenever the form is invalid, at that time it will return a true, and finally the button will get disabled. Now so as to make the field required, we're gonna go ahead with required attribute, and same we wanna go ahead with our contact, and then similarly we're gonna go ahead with our email. All right. So now as you can see, the button has been disabled until and unless you have entered the values in all these three fields. So if I go ahead with Ashish Bakshi and then contact number, and then until and unless that I have entered the values in all these three fields, this button will be disabled. So everything is working good for now. Now let's add some more validation rule. So one thing that we're going to go ahead is we're going to add a pattern attribute. What it will do, it will check for the pattern that we are expecting for the data that has to be entered in that particular field. For example, for a name, we expect characters. A name cannot have any digit inside it, that cannot contain a digit inside it. So we're going to go ahead with a pattern. So I'm going to go ahead with pattern. Basically, I have already got my regex or regular expression for all these. So this one is for the name. You can Google it out whenever you're working on such demos. You will get plenty of regular expression for all such common functionalities or fields. Otherwise, you can go ahead and check out how regular expressions are written and finally add it to your pattern attribute. All right. So basically what it is doing, it is checking for the two things. The first one is your name cannot be of a single character. It should be more than a single character. And the second thing, it should be a character. Same thing, we're going to go ahead with our number, which should be comprised of digits, the numbers, contact number. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. And similarly, the same thing will be for my email. So this is the pattern or the regular expression that I have got here. All right. So let's go ahead and check out whether it is working or not. See if I add 3 and A and an incorrect email ID, let's say joe@123. You can see the button is still disabled even we have entered the value in all these three fields. And if we make it, still it is disabled. So you have to match the pattern that we have specified in our template. All these three fields should match that particular pattern, then only that button will be enabled. Now the next thing that we need is we need to display an alert message regarding the error that the person is doing while entering the values in each of these fields. So for example, if he is entering digits in the name field, then there should be an alert message stating that the name that you are entering is invalid. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and use a div tag, and it will be of an alert danger. And I'm going to use NGF directive that we have discussed in the directive video, which allows us to add or remove a particular element from our DOM based on certain conditions. Here the conditions will be whether the pattern has been matched, whether the person has entered the data in that required field. So we're going to use all those attributes over here. Now, so as to refer to all these controls or input fields, I'm going to go ahead and export a variable with respect to each of these fields based on NGModel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a template variable. Let's say it as name of user. All right. And we'll be doing this using NGModel because NGModel is what that allows us to access the values. So therefore, I'm going to go ahead with name user. And then I'm going to use this name user over here, user dot errors. And I'm going to use something called a safe navigation operator, this question mark that you're seeing over here. Since at the first time the value won't be entered, so you will get an error that referring to a null value, cannot read property of null or undefined. So you're going to go ahead and use the safe navigation operator so as to bypass that error. Now the attribute that we are interested in for now is required. So I'm going to go ahead with required. And I want the message as name is required. Now let's go ahead and check out whether it is working or not. So as you can see, the alert message is being displayed over here. And as soon as I enter the value, that alert message is being removed from my DOM. Now, the thing is that I don't want this alert messages to be displayed like beforehand when a person visits the form. It should happen runtime whenever a person is clicking on that particular field and then leaving that field vacant intentionally, then only it should produce that particular alert message. So I'm going to go ahead and use something called as touched over here. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to do touched, and then if the person has touched that field or has clicked on that field and then clicked on anywhere else, it will check whether the validation that we have added has been satisfied or not. So I'm going to again go ahead with an NJIF, and here I'm going to check as name user dot errors dot question mark dot required. Now for using touch, you have to use your template variable only along with a dot and then followed by a touched. Now here what I'm going to show name is required. All right. So let's go. Now we are not seeing any alert messages. Now whenever I click on this particular field and then click anywhere else, I can see that alert message is being shown here. That means that the person has intentionally left that field vacant, which we do not want. So let's go ahead and add this to all places. So here we'll be having contact is required, and similarly we'll be adding a variable. So I'm going to go ahead with contact user equals to NGModel contact and then contact. Now let's go ahead and do that over here as well for our email field. Again, we're going to go ahead with a variable. This will be email user NGModel email user and then email user. All right. Now email is required as well. So for now we are getting an error property touched of undefined because we haven't passed any value over here. So let's go ahead and add this safe navigation operator. So as you can see, the error has been vanished. Now if I click on that particular field and then click anywhere else, this thing is not working. Let's go ahead and check out what is the issue. So we are having this contact user over here and there's a typo over here. And similarly, let's go ahead with email as well. So everything's fine now, I guess. So now that we have this alert messages being displayed for now. Now also we want different alert messages for different type of problems or different type of validation that we have added. For example, if the person has provided an incorrect or invalid name, then the alert message should be that the name is invalid. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this div tag and let's say errors and then pattern. So if the pattern has not been matched, then it will return a true, and then we'll say contact invalid. All right. Similarly, we're gonna go ahead and do the same everywhere else. So here it will be name user, and it will display name is invalid, or we can say invalid name in short. All right. Similarly, contact, invalid contact. Let's go ahead and do the same with our email. And let's make it as pattern. All right, now let's see whether it is working or not. So if I do 2 and then click over here, you can see we are getting message as invalid name. Similarly, if I do this put an A over here in the contact, a character, it will show as an invalid contact. And then if I go ahead and do something as Joe123, then it will display a message called as invalid email. Similarly, you can go ahead and add more validation. For example, if I'm expecting the user to go ahead with the mobile number, okay, so I'm going to go ahead with my contact, and then let's go ahead and put it over. So now you can't enter more than 10 digit over here. So I'm going to go ahead with 567890, and no more digits are allowed. Similarly, what you can do, you can go ahead with min length as well. If you want the length to be precisely 10, so I'm going to go ahead with another attribute called as min length. Now, whenever you're entering the number which is not matching our pattern, or it is of less digits than that is expected, you will have the same error that will be invalid contact. So I'm going to go ahead and use and I'm going to go ahead with contact user dot errors. Now I'm going to go ahead with min length. All right. So now if I go ahead and provide 333, so I'm not getting the message. Okay, let's do one thing. All right. So what is happening over here that I have used and I should go ahead with or, because either of these should be set to true, then only our invalid contact will be displayed. My bad. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now you can see we are getting an invalid contact number, even if we have entered a digit in the contact field. But the thing is, the length of the number of digits that is expected for a mobile number is not been fulfilled. So that's it. Now, instead of NGF, you can also go ahead with properties like hidden. So what I can do is I can go ahead with hidden over here. And also what we can do, we can use this variable that we have over here, that contact user, and using that we can use a method called as has error, where we will pass the validation that we have added, and it will check whether that has been satisfied or not. So what I'm trying to say is, let me show you a demo. So we can go ahead with contact user dot has error, and there we can pass min length. All right. So this contact user dot has error method, it will return a true value whenever the person that is entering the value in the contact field is not satisfying this min length criteria. It will return as a true value, and that true value will hide the content because it will set the hidden property as true. So what I want is, I want it to set it as false, and also I want to go ahead and use a safe navigation operator. So let's go ahead and check it out. So I'm going to go ahead and put 2 digits over here, and if I click over here, you can see we are getting the same alert message again. Now let's go ahead and do one more thing. Let's add this value, whatever value that has been entered by the user, to our user list array. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So let's create a variable or an object of type user. All right, then what I want is to push this object in my user list. So this dot user list dot push, and it will take the user value. Now we haven't retrieved the value from our form, so I'm going to go ahead and do user equal to form dot value. Now then this form value will be pushed to our list. Now let's go ahead and display the list as well. So I'm going to go ahead with my template. So I'm going to go ahead with an unordered list and an li tag. I'm going to add a CSS class, and that will be list group, and here it will be list group item. And here I'm going to go ahead with my ng for directive. So there I'm going to iterate over my list that we have just created, which will be user list. All right, equals to. Now here what we want is we want to go ahead and interpolate the name of the user. Let's again go ahead with the save navigation operator as well. So this is the contact, and then now as you can see the value are being added. Let's go ahead with Josh, then again some other number, and josh@edureka.co. Now as you can see that Josh has been added as well. So that's it guys, this was all about the forms that we have for today. This is how you go ahead with the template driven forms. So what you need to do, you need to go ahead and use all the directives. You have to create the form, the template itself. Then finally, your template driven forms is powered by directives. So you have to use two major directives over here. The first one is NGForm, the second one is NGModel. Then you need for validation, you can go ahead with properties like required, pattern, min length, max length. And then using NGF or hidden or whatever you want, you can go ahead and based on the condition whether the validation rule has been followed by the user or not, you can go ahead and display an alert message. So that's all about the template driven form guys. Now in the next video I'm going to go ahead and talk about my reactive forms. There will be learn how reactive forms differs from our template driven forms and how we can go ahead and use reactive forms in quite detail. So guys, I hope the session was quite helpful for you. It was informative for you. In case of any query or any doubts, you can go ahead and put your queries in the comment section below. So see you in the next video. Till then, have fun. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!